Meeting number 30 of the Standing Committee on International Trade. There have been some changes in the membership on my side to the left, and I'd like to turn to Mr. Baldinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone, and good morning to our witnesses. Before we start, I'd like to do a little bit of committee business by nominating Kyle Seaback to be the Vice Chair of this committee.
Wow, merci.
Okay. I'll second that. Is there a secret handshake?
Okay.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1062, the Vice Chair must be of the official opposition. Je suis maintenant prête à recevoir des...
I'm now ready to receive motions for the nomination of Vice Chair. It was moved by Mr. Boltonelli that Mr. Seaback be elected as first Vice Chair of the committee.
Is it the pleasure of the committee to adopt the motion? I declare the motion carried and Mr. Seaback duly elected first Vice Chair of the committee.
Merci, mon collègue.
Speech.
Yes, oui, pour 30 minutes.
Yes, a 30-minute speech, please.
So, Mr. Seaback, welcome and congratulations. We're glad to have you. And Mr. Carey, it's really happy to have you on this committee. We've done lots of work over the years together. And so welcome as a great committee. We do a lot of interesting work. And we welcome both of you here. All right, so today's meeting has taken place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23rd, 2022, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of both witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. With regard to interpretation, for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. Please also note that during the meeting, it is not permitted to take pictures in the room or screenshots on Zoom. Should any technical challenges arise, please advise me. Please note that we may need to suspend a few minutes as we need to ensure that all members are able to participate fully. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, 2022, the committee is conducting its study of potential trade implications of transporting goods in railway containers. We have with us today Association of Canadian Port Authorities, Daniel Robert Gooch, President and Chief Executive Officer, and Debbie Murray, Senior Director, Policy and Regulatory Affairs. From the Canadian National Railway Company, Doug McDonald, Chief Marketing Officer. And from GCT Global Container Terminals, Marko Delkovic, Vice President, Public Affairs, by video conference. And from the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, Duncan Wilson, Vice President, Environment and External Affairs, and David Miller, Senior Advisor to the Executive. All people that, in a variety of capacities, most of us are familiar with. So welcome to the committee today. We're happy to have you here and look forward to the information you can provide to committee members. Mr. Gooch, I will invite you to do an opening statement of up to 5 minutes, please.
Good morning, and thank you for requesting our appearance today in your study of the status of shipping containers in Canada. Je m'appelle Daniel Robert Gooch.
I'm Daniel Robert Gooch. I'm President of the Association of Canadian Port Authorities, and I'm joined by Debbie Murray, Senior Director, Policy and Regulatory Affairs with the Association. We represent the 17 Canada port authorities that move most of Canada's international cargo and operate at arm's length of government to manage federal port lands. The rail companies, trucking companies, vessel owners and operators and terminals are key partners for ports within the supply chain.
Shipping when they were introduced over 70 years ago and have become the standard multi-purpose mechanism for transporting goods and commodities from hinterland to port to vessel multimodal. Given the centrality of containers to shipping, when there are broader system impacts and trends to shipping, this can have significant impacts on container movements and availability. COVID-19, geopolitical issues, and labor challenges are examples of factors that have caused challenges with container supply. We have all heard the stories of containers delayed or the shortage of containers. And with the increased use of containers for grain and other formerly bulk exports, container shortages now also affect Canada's exports. In Canada, container movements are dependent on rail and truck movements and the intermodal connection with vessels at Canadian ports, where backhauls of both filled and empties ensured continued movement of containers to destinations for loading and unloading. We are hearing from our members that intermodal capacity in supply chains remains under pressure, particularly for containerized cargo. While Canadian ports are not experiencing as much congestion as those in the U.S., average wait times have increased, and there is a domino effect. Many importers have been delayed in taking possession of their goods. Similarly, storage and floor space for containers is scarce. As a result, the railroads have been forced to prioritize less congested corridors. For example, the Port of Montreal tells us it has had to deal with a backlog of containers on the ground, sometimes with an average dwell time of up to 40 days. The port became an open-air warehouse with almost 12,000 containers at one point. You will hear from Port of Vancouver about the increasing number of vessels that have had longer waits at anchorage because of container movement or availability delays. So what can be done to relieve pressure and build a responsive, safe, and secure and reliable supply chain and ensure that container supply and movement continues to be reliable in the years ahead? The Supply Chain Task Force report, released earlier this month, yielded many excellent recommendations that could address container movements, including immediate regulatory and policy changes to address congestion and inefficiency, digitalization and supply chain visibility, support for enhanced port financial flexibility, and a long-term, future-proof transportation supply chain strategy. Our country needs such a strategy, one that incorporates a multi-stakeholder approach to ensuring that current and future capacity and reliability is there for Canada, and one that factors in climate change and other shocks to the system. We understand that the development of a national strategy is part of Minister Algabra's mandate, and so we look forward to understanding more about the government's plans in developing this strategy. But a key part of it must be supply chain visibility, knowing where the goods and containers are and where the bottlenecks and available capacity are. This visibility relies on digitalization and data governance. We have the tools and the data, which we see as our ports and industry players pilot digitalization and visibility initiatives. We also look forward to understanding more about the $136 million federal digitalization initiative announced last Friday. For ports specifically, there are elements we are hoping to see in Minister Algabra's coming work on ports modernization and amendments to the Canada Marine Act to allow Canada Port Authorities to more nimbly fulfill their role within supply chains. Financial flexibility through the ability to access interested private capital to build port projects and invest in optimization is key, as is permanent national trade corridor funding. The ability of ports to purchase land off-site for the establishment of secondary sites for the movement of containers would also enhance local and regional efficiency, and accelerated port projects through the impact assessment process would also assist the development of physical supply chain infrastructure. There is other low-hanging fruit that could help. The United States allows for en route customs clearance of containers, which allows containers to be moved into the U.S. prior to their formal release. Canada does not have the same practice. Harmonizing with the United States on this could facilitate movement. Canada Border Services Agency's sublocation container policy could also be updated to allow for containers to be moved to another location for clearance from their initial point of unloading. Containers will continue to be used to move manufactured goods into the country and move commodities out of Canada's ports. we have an opportunity with all the focus and collective thinking aimed at supply chains and container movements today to ensure that this continues in a reliable, innovative, safe, and secure manner for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gooch. Mr. McDonald, please.
Thank you. Bonjour à tous. Merci d'avoir.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing CN to contribute to the work of this committee by providing information on the supply chain in Canada, as well as to the potential next steps that would benefit all participants moving goods in and out of Canada.
Contributor to the import and export goods for Canada. In 2021, CN moved over 5.7 million shipments of freight across its network, with over 30% of that being import or export business. Primary commodities moved for export are grain, coal, potash, propane, pulp, ore concentrates, and many more. Imports are more concentrated around containers filled with retail merchandise. These supply chains are normally in balance and follow a low inventory model where products are moved close to a just-in-time model. With the beginning of COVID, these supply chains experienced significant disruptions in demand that caused many peaks and valleys for supply. The supply chain challenges really accelerated in late spring 2022. Consumer demand was going strong, and retail stores ordered substantial inventory to avoid stockouts that occurred the prior winter. This led to a dramatic increase in imported containers that flooded the West Coast ports. These containers then moved inland to intermodal terminals for final delivery by truck. These imports quickly filled warehouse space in Montreal and Toronto while waiting for a peak sales season in the fall. The imports soon backed up with storage filled, so retail stores left the containers in terminals, which then backed up the containers at the ports, followed by ships waiting to unload at full terminals. With a fragmented supply chain, there was no one source of information that was occurring so that participants in the supply chain could plan and react in a timely manner. What did CN do? First of all, I would like to highlight the role that Transport Canada played in bringing all the participants together to find solutions. CN led the charge in finding solutions where none were offered. We quickly implemented additional capacity expansions at key terminals in Montreal and Toronto. CN opened additional third-party container yard storages at multiple sites in Toronto. CN also quickly leased the shuttered Valleyfield Intermodal Terminal and reopened it to take in trains directly bound for Montreal. These solutions released the pressure on port terminals, allowing volumes to move from the ports to inland terminals so that the end customers could pick them up and ports continue to receive shipments. All these solutions came at a cost where CN ran extra trains, added significant overtime to terminal employees, and added resources and drivers and chassis where available. The result of these actions had the container backlog in Montreal cleared by the end of August. We just closed the Valleyfield Terminal as the current volumes are at a level where CN's Montreal Terminal can handle it. For Toronto containers, CN has been able to clean up almost the entire backlog prior to the end of September. To be clear, this was a CN-led solution to a non-rail supply chain issue. There continues to be delays in the last-mile delivery of containers. Warehouses continue to be full. Customers continue to use containers as interim storage with the current warehouse situation. CN is continuing to work with customers to balance terminal and rail capacity, resulting in the timely pickup of containers so that there is space for new containers to come in, as well as taking in empties to go back to ports or to other loading points for exports. As the saying goes, the supply chain is only as strong as the weakest link, and attention must be paid to the performance of all participants for the supply chain to function optimally. I will now highlight some areas for improvement on all supply chain participants. The first step is to better data coordination and integration for all members of the supply chain. For container imports, the supply chain needs to know details as soon as the container leaves the origin port on its way to a Canadian port. This information is currently transmitted to the CBSA for customs approval. This information would provide the ports with an ETA where the container is going so that they can place it in the port facility for furtherance by rail or truck, what the contents and weight are for proper positioning in the train, and preparation for final pickup and delivery from the inland terminal. Currently, none of this data is made available to supply chain partners. CBSA also has older IT systems and the process that prohibit the flexibility in the supply chain. While CBSA acknowledges the need and value, we are not aware of any progress on that front. Additional infrastructure is also required. In order to handle more volumes through the existing supply chains, capacity expansions must be undertaken. This includes port infrastructure, rail capacity, and inland terminal capacity. If Canada wants to have spare capacity available short-term notification, then the government will need to focus on funding this type of infrastructure. The NTCF program is a good solution for this and needs to be fully funded and used for this infrastructure. Canada also has one of the longest timelines to approve infrastructure investment. It makes it impossible to quickly adapt to a changing supply chain. In order for Canada to expand in trade, the government needs to streamline the process for infrastructure investment in Canada. By the way of example, it took CN over 7 years to get its Milton Intermodal Terminal approved. These delays threaten the agility of the supply chain to respond to emerging issues or crisis. Regulation in Canada continues to slow down or stifle investment decisions as well. Canada's National Transportation Policy provides that regulation and strategic public intervention are used to achieve economic, safety, security, environmental, or social outcomes that cannot be achieved satisfactorily by the competition and market forces. I submit that regulation has departed from that guidance and needlessly interfered with market forces that would deliver better results for the market participants and the global economy. If the need to regulate exists, it must be based on hard evidence and tailored to address real issues, rather than issues presented through a perspective of certain market participants. Uncertainties and lack of evidence-based regulation create uncertainties that deter investments in Canada versus other countries with a consistent policy agenda. Lastly, the government needs to promote further automation of the supply chain while considering the ESG impacts of those changes. All supply chain participants will continue to automate while reducing the impact on the environment. The government can help in these areas by funding innovations that provide the largest impact for all Canadians. This would all need to be done through with a solid implementation plan with safety embedded in every area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Dekovic, please, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to be with you today as you continue your important study. My name is Marco Dekovic. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs of the GCT Global Container Terminals. I am speaking to you today from the traditional and treaty territories of the Coast Salish people in British Columbia. GCT is headquartered in Vancouver and operates 2 container terminals. GCT Vanterm, with capacity of about 850,000 TEUs, located in Burrard Inlet in downtown Vancouver, and GCT Deltaport at Roberts Bank, near the city of Delta, with the current capacity of 2.4 million TEUs. It is currently Canada's largest container terminal, but the Prince Rupert's Fairview terminal is quickly catching up. We are tenants of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority and direct employers and infrastructure investors where Canada's rail network meets Tidewater. GCT is a majority Canadian-owned company with 3 institutional investor shareholders, the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan and British Columbia Investment Management Corporation and IFM Investors. Our active experience in the sector uniquely positions us to provide input to the committee related to your current study. First, we have to reflect on the causes of the supply chain challenges. The effects of the pandemic and climate change on the global supply chain in the last years have brought a series of major disruptions to the overall network. Canada was not immune. We have seen them materialize in manufacturing, trucking, raw materials supply, inland storage, and distribution. Moreover, the extreme weather in BC, British Columbia, namely the devastating floods and forest fires, furthered the problems with closing of the rail lines, resulting in backups of cargo ships at anchorages in Port of Vancouver. At present, from our perspective, the railways have been utilizing capacity at their Vancouver intermodal terminals to truck in imports from the port to help ease the congestion. In recent months, we have also seen a more fluid network with daily rail car supply being more consistent, even though at times outbound trains have been restricted by congestion and capacity issues in Toronto and Montreal warehouses, as you have just heard from CN before me. However, increased rail surge capacity is urgently needed in order to support restoration of Canada's supply chain fluidity. CN Rail and CP Rail are the only 2 railways that move container trains in and out of Metro Vancouver. It is important to consider in your study that approximately 35% of all inbound containers entering Canada's West Coast ports hold discretionary cargo headed for US by rail. This means that importers and shipping lines at their discretion can redirect containers through other ports on Canadian or US West or East Coast, depending on variables such as price differentials, rail dwell times, reliability of rail and terminal services, and even port authority fees. It is also important to note that about 70% of containers that arrive at our GCT Deltaport terminal are rail-bound. If containers are not being evacuated at an appropriate rate by rail, the container dwell time will increase. Terminals will be congested, and soon enough, vessels calling those terminals will back up at anchorages. No matter how many container terminals or operators you have, if the rail supply is not keeping up with the demand, the system will congest. Which leads me to my next point. It has been suggested by the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority that container terminal capacity has been a contributing factor to supply chain challenges, and that a proposed Roberts Bank Terminal 2 will somehow solve them. That is not the case, as it will be connected to exactly the same rail lines as the existing terminals. The West Coast container terminal capacity has not been a contributing factor to supply chain challenges. In fact, Canada has container terminal capacity available to meet current and future demands well into 2030s. At GCT, we're doing our part as a private operator, optimizing and investing in infrastructure to support our customers' needs. In 2018, GCT invested $300 million into the semi-automated intermodal rail yard densification project, which has provided superb rail cargo surge capacity at the recent times when it was most needed. So when it comes to solutions, it is all about surge capacity and collaboration. There's no single solution to this problem. The government has a role in facilitating collaboration, but ultimately it must be executed by supply chain partners through experience and commercial relationships. It must include a holistic approach and consider inland container storage, inland warehousing, and flex capacity that will make the supply chain more resilient and fluid when the next natural disaster, hard winter, pandemic, or a blockade hits. The recent Supply Chain Task Force report has identified some good recommendations for immediate actions in this regard. GCT strongly supports efforts being made by our rail supply chain partners toward capacity increases and resiliency upgrades. GCT knows that improvements to Canada's rail system will improve the movement of Canada's trade domestically and to the key U.S. and international markets. Thank you again for the invitation to appear today, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Wilson, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. My name is Duncan Wilson, and I'm Vice President in Environment and External Affairs with the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. I'm joined today by my colleague David Miller, Senior Advisor to the Executive. We're pleased to be here today to discuss issues related to the impact of container traffic on Canadian trade, which is central to the business and success of the Port of Vancouver. The Port of Vancouver is Canada's largest port, handling $275 billion worth of cargo annually. A wide range of products and commodities move through our 29 major marine cargo terminals. We're extremely proud of our environmental record and are focused on achieving our goal of being the world's most sustainable port. The port currently has 4 container terminals in operation, and we are optimistic that we will soon get approval to move forward with the construction of a 5th terminal located in the key Roberts Bank area. Our container business has grown rapidly over the past decade, reaching 3.7 million TEUs in 2021. While we did see a decline of 7% mid-year in 2022, that was largely attributable to COVID-related lockdowns in China, impacts from the extreme weather events in late 2021, which washed out the road, and the rail network east of the port for 2 weeks and slowed disrupted traffic for months well into 2022. This was then followed by terminals in Ontario and Quebec not having space to receive the containers, which stranded containers in the port and on board ships. Our container business is vital for importers and exporters across the country. The public has learned a good deal about supply chains in the past few years and now know that a very wide range of consumer products and parts and components for manufacturing travel to Canada by container. The export business is less well known but extremely important for Canada. Canadian exporters in many sectors move their products to market in containers. This includes products which traditionally moved in bulk or break bulk, such as forest products and some agricultural products such as pulse and specialty crops. In addition, food products such as meat, fish, and shellfood move in refrigerated containers. As I mentioned, extreme weather challenges impacted container traffic in 2021 and carried over into 2022. Container ships normally move on set routes on predictable schedules. Pre-COVID, it was rare to see a container ship at anchor at the port. They arrived on schedule and they went directly to a terminal to unload and load. However, COVID and particularly lockdowns in China have disrupted schedules, led to backups, and made schedules less predictable. In Canada, this has meant congestion at the container terminals and congestion at rail terminals and warehouses in eastern Canada. I was just in Asia with other members of our executive, meeting with some of the steamship lines that serve our port. What we heard was consistent with what we've been hearing for some time. They need more capacity, and they would like to have more options in terminal operators. This message reinforced the importance of increasing terminal capacity at the port, and that requires getting our new Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project approved and built. We are currently also completing an expansion of the Centerm terminal in Burrard Inlet. That expansion, which increases the terminal's capacity by 60%, while only increasing the footprint of the terminal by 15%, will be virtually sold out when it opens at the end of this year, something that was reinforced in our meetings with shipping lines in this most recent trip. The new RBT2 container terminal will be located at Roberts Bank, an extremely strategic location for Canada as it has no air draft or water draft restrictions. The new three-berth terminal will increase capacity at Roberts Bank in a phased manner and bring in a third operator, adding to DP World, which operates 2 terminals in Vancouver and in Prince Rupert, and GCT, which operates the other 2 terminals in Vancouver. To date, we have signed 21 mutual benefit agreements with First Nations who are very supportive of the project. In addition to added terminal capacity, we continue to move forward on a number of infrastructure projects which remove bottlenecks and improve rail and truck access to the terminals. We have achieved significant benefit from numerous projects partially funded under the National Trade Corridor Fund and its predecessors. These include major road and rail projects along the corridor to Roberts Bank, built in anticipation of Roberts Bank Terminal 2. We were also working with Transport Canada and our supply chain partners to develop transparency and reporting tools and processes which will help everyone in identifying problems and solutions. In conclusion, I would emphasize that we are confident that container traffic through the Port of Vancouver will continue to grow in the coming years and decades. We believe Canada's container sector, including the ports, terminals, trucking sector, and railways, have done a good job in dealing with the disruptions and other challenges related to both the pandemic and the weather-related disruptions. We're also proud of our record ensuring that growth has not had and will not have a negative impact on the environment. We appreciate the opportunity to appear today and look forward to your questions.
And on to the members. Mr. Baldinelli for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, thank you and welcome to our witnesses this morning. I'd like to thank our colleagues for undertaking this study. We all have a perspective of how it impacts the national economy, but, you know, it was interesting. I had a small business that came into me on Friday to discuss the challenges that they're facing with regards to getting their containers and the increased costs that is being placed on them because of the congestions and issues that they are facing. So it's kind of timely, and I thank the members for being here. I'm going to probably follow up with Mr. McDonald first of all, because I'd like to relate some of the issues that my constituent and her small business, which has been in operations for about 30 years, they're bringing in a container from Italy to the Port of Montreal, maybe 1 a week, maybe 2 or 3, if things are a benefit to them. And they're seeing huge backlogs in Toronto and storage fees and wait time fees. I mean, she wrote to me and she relayed to me that, you know, just in June, they indicated, you know, because of the economy, gas prices. And that was fair enough. They're starting to see those invoices passed along to them. But then they're also starting to see June, July, they were getting additional charges for wait times. Even though the company had agreements to be there and pick up their goods, they're being charged additional fees over and above if those companies have to wait. And then they're also being charged for returning empty containers that, for example, may go back to the yards that have no place to go. So the company then keeps them and joins these additional costs. In fact, the business at the one time received an email saying, in July, saying, we ask that you suspend sending us orders until further notice. We need to clear up the current orders before we can accept any more. I mean, how does one do business like that? I mean, you're being asked to stop doing business, essentially. And we see these great delays. I mean, I was pleased to hear you say, Mr. McDonald, that you've cleared essentially the Montreal backlog as of August. And you're talking about the current backlog in Toronto is almost cleared. And that notion of when you believe that will happen and what needs to occur. I mean, would this facility that's planned in Milton, would that address your future operations in terms of having those facilities and yards available as opposed to having to kind of immediately rent additional facilities?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So you're accurate on all your numbers. Would Milton help? The answer is absolutely. So we tried to get Milton up and running for the last 7 years. It's finally under construction after basically 8 years going through the process of getting it approved. That would have easily helped out, given us the surge capacity to handle what's been happening today. Now, at the same time, when Milton fills up eventually, because Canada will continue to import more, we will continue to need to expand either in other terminals or have other partners where we could go and put containers for that surge capacity. All of the rail infrastructure, like most customers, it's built around that just-in-time model. So containers come in, they go out, right? When customers don't pick up their containers for 2 days, 5 days, now we're talking 30 days because they don't have a warehouse to put it in, it stacks up the terminal quickly. And basically that's why you're seeing increased fees to try to encourage people to come pull their container out and get it out so we can bring in more from the ports. So surge capacity is critical, and we're going to need to continue to build that into the future.
Now, quickly, in terms of the operations, are you also impacted by issues such as labor shortages, issues such as skilled trades? I mean, the recommendations that were put forward recently, we talk about increased digitization, but that's going to take some time. So that doesn't immediately help my constituent who's facing those backlogs and those additional charges now. So how much longer is she expected to be taking on these additional costs, and when these backlogs can be finally addressed?
Yeah. None of it was labor related. It was all space related. So we actually had full staffing at the terminals. It was just a matter of being able to process all those containers through that terminal at that time and having customers come pick them up. We thought there was actually a shortage on trucking capacity, but it turns out the truckers didn't have warehouses to put it in. So with the warehouses being full, we couldn't get the trucks to come in to pull containers to take them out, and it just backlogged the entire system.
Now, those additional fees for the extra yards that were charged, I think under our briefing note, it was like $300 for the CN yard in Mississauga. Is that directly billed to the transportation company, who then just passes on the cost to the small business?
It's whoever's coming to pick up the container. So we don't even have the information. So when that container comes in from one of the big steamship lines, it gets dropped in our terminal, and that's where our information stops. They contact that end receiver, who would be your constituent, to come and have arranged to come pick it up. They make a reservation through their drayage company to come pick it up. We don't know who the container belongs to. We don't know what's in it. And we don't know how long it's going to sit there.
Now, in terms of cost, like the excellent briefing note that was prepared by your staff says, I mean, freight, rail freight is about $10 billion to our economy. And I was just wondering, do we have a cost of, what these delays have caused our Canadian economy? Can anyone put a figure on what these backlogs, what these delays have done to the Canadian economy in terms of a cost?
I cannot, because it would be more on the retail side. I don't think anyone's calculated that to my knowledge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr. Valdinelli. Mr. Varani, for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments today. I'll start with some of what you referenced. A number of you referenced sort of the role of the federal government in terms of convening conversations and bringing people together for collaboration. You referenced Minister Alghabra and Transport Canada and some of the work that's being done. And obviously we know that there was a national summit in January of this year on supply chain irritants. I want to ask about the first sort of point, and I'll direct this to Mr. Gooch, Daniel Robert. You mentioned the announcement that was just made on Friday, and that's about an expansion at Trois-Rivières of that port. And my understanding is that it's a total cost of $130 million. Our government is putting in $30 million into that expansion. It's hoping to create about 630 jobs and hoping to have that terminal opening by the end of 2023. Can you comment upon initiatives like that and what kind of impact they will have in the Quebec sort of ecosystem in terms of alleviating pressure on the Port of Montreal in particular?
Well, I can speak in general terms. So the National Trade Corridors Fund has provided nearly $1 billion to Canada's port authorities, and that's been essential. Port authorities, the way they're structured, I come from the air sector where it's quite different how our infrastructure is structured. They have strict borrowing limits, and so their ability to make those investments themselves is quite limited, and the National Trade Corridors Fund has really filled in the gaps there. There's more that could be done. Canadian Port Authorities are currently barred from many federal funding programs that are out there, regional economic development program funds, for example. But I'd say the NTCF has been fantastic. You referenced a lot of the work that's been done underway, the summit and the work of the task force. I think what that adds to the picture is an umbrella over that. The beginning, the beginning, a very good beginning to looking at our trade corridors from a strategic perspective. Funding is part of it, but I think the work that we've seen over the last year with the task force is a really good beginning to what we need to do next.
Thank you. I'm going to direct the next question to, I believe it's Mr. Wilson, but it also dovetails with something Mr. Gooch raised, which was climate and climate impacts. And I salute you for the work that you guys are doing in Vancouver, but also the efforts to make sure that it's the most sustainable port in the world, and your efforts at inclusion with Indigenous peoples on the land. That's all very commendable. But can you talk to us a bit about sort of the impacts? You talked about sort of roads being washed out, et cetera. We know about the intense flooding that happened in BC. I feel like within the last year, I mean, time is blurring a little bit, but can you just talk to us about climate impacts on the supply chain and how we can work as a government to alleviate them? We're trying to make investments. We obviously have a price on pollution. These are significant gestures that we're making towards addressing the impacts of climate change. But if there's other targeted approaches that you think would be necessary to help address the supply chain issues. So over to you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. There are some short-term and there are some longer-term implications. So obviously, extreme weather events will continue to happen. And so to the extent that infrastructure can be hardened and resilience can be built into the network, that's critical. The railways actually did an incredible job at restoring their infrastructure after the floods last year. I don't think any of us expected them to be able to get into operation as quickly as they did after that major damage. From a longer-term point of view, we are obviously, ports are at sea level and will be affected by storm surges, sea level rise, and so over time, investment in hardening or raising the level of marine terminals is going to be important to protect them against those extreme weather events themselves. Last year, the weather events didn't affect the port itself. The port actually, all the way through the pandemic, all the way through the weather events, was very resilient. It was the inland supply chain where things really broke down. I would say the other thing that is critical, it's critical in the lower mainland of British Columbia, it's also critical in the Metro Toronto region, is land. So we have a tremendous shortage of trade-enabling land, and there is no surge capacity. We had to actually take, in partnership with Transport Canada, a marine terminal site that we're holding for development of marine terminal and repurpose it on a temporary basis to take extra containers, to get containers off the terminal because there was nowhere to put them. Marine container terminals shouldn't be used as container storage. Obviously, that's prime real estate that we need for trade. So we do need that surge capacity, both to protect against climate events, but to protect against other unforeseen supply chain shocks that will continue to occur into the future.
Thank you. I believe I have about a minute left. If I could just direct a question to Mr. Dekovich. You talked about other irritants to the supply chain, and I believe you mentioned preparing for unforeseen events such as blockades. Can you just comment upon the impact of the blockades that we saw last January, February, March in terms of the impacts on the supply chains around Canada?
Well, of course, as I mentioned, our terminals are connected to the rail lines. If the rail lines are blockaded after a significant amount of time, as you heard, everything backs up onto terminals, and terminals are not intended to be warehouses, and that's where supply chain challenges occur. I believe it was 4 or 6 days of rail shutdowns that instantly kind of compounds the challenges in the supply chain. There is existing capacity, probably about 3 to 4 days on terminals that can absorb rail shutdowns, but after that you will start feeling it in the supply chain, and if that occurs again for a longer period of time, we'll probably have the same results.
Okay. Thank you very much. On to Mr. Savard-Tremblay.
Good morning to our witnesses. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentations, and thank you to all our colleagues. This question isn't to any witness in particular, but During the last committee meeting we had a week or a week and a half ago, a witness pointed out that some shipping companies were considerably increasing the cost of shipping containers to Canada. For example, on October 6, 2022, the shipping cost for a 40-foot container from Shanghai to Seattle was $2,015, while a similar cost, a similar container to Vancouver cost about $6,000. Have you seen that in the eastern part of Canada there had also been considerable cost increases of this kind?
Malheureusement, je ne pourrai pas.
Unfortunately, I don't have the information I would need to answer that. Can someone else answer?
Context of the West Coast, but I can't speak to it in the context of the East Coast. We have seen through the pandemic and continuing through the surge that we've seen significant increases in shipping rates for containers coming into North America, and yes, into Vancouver and the West Coast of Canada as well. And during that period of time, there was also a strong desire on the part of shipping lines to pull empty containers back to Asia as quickly as possible, which created another issue of a shortage of empties for export. We're now starting to see that situation reverse itself as we're seeing freight rates coming to North America declining and more containers being available for export. So I think that it was hopefully a short-term problem, and we are starting to see rates normalize, and we are seeing demand sort of peter off. So hopefully, I'm not sure if it's the same situation on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, that's what was occurring.
Mais néanmoins, supposons que...
If we hypothesize that the reasons for that difference in cost aren't very different for the East and West Coast, you've seen a big hike in prices on the West Coast. Can we do something to reduce those price increases tangibly?
Ultimately, it's a market-driven system, so the market will set the price. And with that huge demand, it was, that was unprecedented. If you imagine that demand continued into the future, the market would respond, and there would more shipping capacity available, and you'd probably see prices normalize. But in terms of government intervening in that market mechanism, I think it's an area where we should be very, very cautious. And in particular, I notice in the United States where they took some unprecedented steps. I would say that where we're looking to do any of those types of interventions, it would be very wise to look at harmonizing with the United States.
Donc aux États-Unis.
So you're saying that in the U.S., the government did take measures with results that were good, not so good. Were they conclusive at all? We are trying to avoid future crises.
I can't speak to the effectiveness of the measures in the United States. I would just say that market intervention should be the last resort, and in our view, and that the market should naturally correct most of these situations over time, as we are now seeing with shipping rates coming down and an increase in availability of export containers for Canadian exporters.
Je ne sais pas si d'autres collègues veulent ajouter.
Other colleagues might want to add some comments on this, whether to allow the government to intervene or whether to let the market take its course.
Thank you. I always think it's best to let the market take its course. With that, there has to be oversight on how that impacts the overall economy. I'll speak for what I do know is that overall the west coast of the U.S. and what they put in place had no impact whatsoever on the pricing model. So it continued to be very high over and above norms. What we're told is on the East Coast coming into the East also took dramatic increases, not quite as high as what into the West Coast, but also had a major impact on shippers coming into the coastal ports. At the same time, I will confirm that rail to bring it inland works on long-term contracts, and our rates were all the same that entire time period. trucking rates were relatively the same. So all those rates were really going to the steamship lines.
Donc, dans les politiques qui ont été adoptées.
So if we look at that experience, the policies didn't make a big change, so none of you are recommending intervening on shipping rates. You recommend that we should wait and see and let industries survive as best they can until the market takes its course.
A brief answer, please.
Par oui ou par non, ça va.
Yes or no will do.
I believe that you should continue to let the market dictate pricing.
Merci.
Thank you.
Very much. Mr. Massey for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a quick comment. You know, I do appreciate the commentary of market take its force, but I also appreciate the fact that often comes from people asking for public money because the market hasn't invested in itself over a number of different decades and having record profits. So if the market is supposed to correct itself, then maybe it can correct itself without public money for a change. I do want to move towards the issue over the just-in-time delivery, and maybe start with Mr. McDonald, and then Mr. Dikovic, you mentioned it as well, too, in terms of this is something similar my friend and colleague, Mr. Carey, will be familiar with. The auto industry moved to just-in-time delivery. And so what ended up happening is that we basically moved the warehouses that used to actually store the parts and supplies off the site of the assembly plants and off the side of warehouses onto city streets, highways, and now you're indicating they're now in your yards. So maybe you can kind of highlight, I don't think enough people are aware of maybe that situation that's evolved and how difficult it is.
From just in time, it doesn't allow for any hiccups in the supply chain, so it's a great question. What that means is everything has to work perfectly or else something backs up, or there has to be some capacity in the supply chain. Now, I'll say there's a little bit of fudge or capacity in all areas of the supply chain right now. We've added tremendous on the rail side. There's extra warehouses being built. The ports have actually done a great job of trying to find extra places to put containers coming in. But it does create major problems as soon as there's a bubble in the supply chain, and that's what we've witnessed.
Okay, and Mr. Dikovic, can you kind of comment on that and added to that, and then I'll return to Mr. McDonald to think about it in between, because I want to see, are those costs being passed on to the actual original OEMs in terms of those originally supplying and sending it in, or is it being passed on to the other end of the supply chain, being the businesses, maybe sometimes small and mediums that are sharing containers and so forth? So what's happening with that, and where's the, because often that's the auto industry, is that tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3 end up getting the costs from the OEMs passed on to them, and that's a challenge. So please, Mr. Dikovic.
So thank you. So from a container terminal perspective, you know, I echo what's been said around. We've seen a move from just-in-time delivery to just-in-case delivery, and that mind shift has further exacerbated the challenges of the supply chain with, you know, over-ordering and congesting warehouses, et cetera, that you've heard from other presenters today as well. So that kind of shift from just-in-time to just-in-case, you know, has caused an issue. Further on, much like CN mentioned, is we as a terminal operator operate on long-term contracts, and so our lift rates during the, you know, these dynamic times in the supply chain have basically remained the same as because of the long-term contracts. But just to illustrate to you, like, sort of how the market is correcting itself, I encourage you to look at the Drury Composite World Index on containers. They track the kind of index price of a container coming from Asia to the west coast of North America and back. So that index, you know, a year ago was just over $11,000, and right now it's below $4,000, so somewhere in mid $3,000 range. So you can see how massively it has corrected itself very quickly due to market demands. Yes, when the costs were high, my assumption is that some of those costs were ultimately passed on to the shipper and the end user. But again, all those arrangements are usually commercial arrangements, and so there's probably exceptions to every rule. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
No, it's excellent. And Mr. McDonald, kind of where does the bump, I guess, and the price go up on the front end of it, or later on the second part of it? Because you're having to deal with occupied space on your property and logistic issues, I'm sure.
Yeah, so the railways have very little opportunity to change long-term pricing models, right? What we do have the ability to do is change I'll say anything that happens outside of the norm, extra storage, things like that, which is why the storage fees had gone up in order to encourage customers to remove them from the terminal. Now, to answer your other question as well, is that usually it's the small guy that gets hurt the most because it's a contractual arrangement. I understand that, but usually the big guy dictates what the contractual arrangements are. So in the case of retail customers, they were paying for the storage in Toronto because the steamship lines won't, and that was the contractual arrangement they had with them. With respect to the OEMs and the big and the part suppliers, the OEMs are the big dog. The parts guys end up eating everything until it gets inside the gate.
Excellent. Okay, so this is similar. This is a common theme that we're hearing, and appreciate that. To Mr. Gooch, really quickly, I know that you're ineligible for some government programs and funding, but ports, I guess the only concern that I would have, and I am open to the discussion about accessibility of that, but you also are exempt from municipal bylaws and planning to some degree. Is that something ports would reconsider? If because I could see considerable conflict. I mean, most ports operate fairly good with the municipalities, but there are at times conflicts with regards to what takes place. Is that something that the port authorities would be willing to reconsider in terms of if there is a change in public access to funds?
Well, it's not something I've discussed with my members, but the comparison I make would be with the airport authorities. So federal assets operate at arm's length of government and with locally responsive governance and a public interest mandate. Airport authorities are eligible for economic impact or economic development funds, and port authorities are not. And the port authorities have, as I spoke to earlier, borrowing limits which are time-consuming and difficult to change. It involves working with Transport Canada. It can take years. So there may be opportunities for the ports to make their own investments, based on commercial viability and creditworthiness, commercial viability of the project and creditworthiness. But that's not an angle that they have access to. So really, what we're looking for is more tools to allow port authorities to be more nimble in making the investments that they want to make. Federal funding is really just one of those tools. Without changing the structure, and we do hope to see some greater flexibility come into effect for ports through Minister Algalber's upcoming port modernization legislation. Federal funding is there to fulfill that gap.
Thank you, and Madam Chair,
Thank you very much. So
yep. Okay.
Your time is up. Mr. Martel for 5 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I'll begin with Mr. Gooch. Question for Mr. Gooch. According to the 2021 study on shipping at the UN conferences, it was said that a return to normal would require investment in infrastructure, freight transportation technology, and digitization. In your opinion, what infrastructure is lacking in Canada to improve supply chains?
Oui, je vais répondre en anglais.
I will answer in English, if I may.
Bit of it just moments ago in terms of the flexibility that ports have to invest in their infrastructure. There's physical infrastructure, but there's also the digital infrastructure, and perhaps I'll turn it to my colleague Debbie Murray to speak a little bit more detail to that.
Hi, thank you for your question. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks. With regards to the anticipated demands on our infrastructure, one comment that we've made repeatedly to the government is that there needs to be a determination and a systematic assessment of infrastructure across Canada. Many of our port authorities have, as Mr. Gooch has alluded to, have benefited from NTCF funds almost in the order of $1 billion. And many of these projects have actually addressed many of the infrastructure gaps. But to my point about a systematic assessment, I think that would identify not just the port requirements, but also the requirements along the entire supply chain. And with that first systematic assessment, that could be folded into a transportation strategy that the Supply Chain Task Force alluded to. I can also speak with regards to digitalization and the comment that Mr. Gooch made with regards to the physical infrastructure also. Specifically, there are there is an ongoing concern around deferred maintenance. So many of the port authorities have not had the funds to actually continue the maintenance of their ports. So we've seen some instances where wharfs have deteriorated due to climate change, where they don't have the funds right now to in terms of improving their current infrastructure. And then in an ongoing basis, the digitalization, we still need to determine, specifically what the cost would be there and what the technology would be. I do understand that Infrastructure Canada has conducted an infrastructure assessment, and that may also provide some information in terms of some of the gaps. We also are looking at potentially conducting our own infrastructure assessment moving forward, just to consider some of the recommendations put forward by the task force.
Ouais.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. MacDonald, could I hear you on the same question? What is Canada lacking in terms of infrastructure to improve the supply chains?
So digitization is a great answer. So you need digitization to actually be able to automate. So one of the few things that'll really help is further automation within the entire supply chain. That goes from the ports to the railways to the trucking industry. As that happens, you'll get rid of a lot of, I'll say, downtime in the different areas and be able to move more freight, and more issues for customers will get through the supply chain a lot quicker. The other thing is you still are going to need surge capacity longer term, because markets are never flat all the time. So that's going to require either infrastructure at port or inland. Technically, when we went through the whole issue of Transport Canada, the customers asked for inland storage more than anything else. So that's something that's lacking right now in the industry, and we have to look at how we make that available.
Monsieur MacDonald.
Mr. MacDonald, once again, in an article in the Financial Post on July 22nd, Merck's notified its clients that the biggest impediment in Toronto, the overload in Toronto, was forcing CN to control movements of merchandise between Prince Rupert and the other end of the country to prevent overcrowding. Why has it taken so long for Canadian industry to add the inputs that are needed?
Well, we've been trying to add the input. So a great example is for in Toronto itself, when we did have to constrain because the terminal was absolutely full, and if we didn't do that, then we shut down. We've been trying to get a second terminal up in Toronto, which is at Milton, for now 8 years. So that goes back to my comments around how quickly we can get infrastructure put into this country, and the regulations that go into it has made it very tough. I think we would have had the ability to buffer that supply chain dramatically more by having Milton up and running, and only time will tell that as we get that up and running in the next 2 to 3 years now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Martel. On to Mr. Miao for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for all the witness on attending on this study today. I'd like to direct the following question to Mr. Wilson. I have the pleasure of meeting him a couple months ago and did a tour at the Vancouver Fraser Port at the Broad Inlet. Can you give us an idea how this pandemic have affected our ports in Vancouver on the amount of containers coming in, and what is the time span of, from Anchorage to port, offloading to a truck or onto a rail and deliver its logistic across Canada?
Thank you. Fortunately, the time span is decreasing quickly, but we were seeing situations where we would have multiple container ships at anchor for long periods of time. And we measure the dwell of containers on the terminal, and the terminal dwell has been continuing to come down steadily. I think it's now at about 4 days. I think what needs to be emphasized here is that I think this was a big learning for all of us in terms of how resilient or not the Canadian supply chain has been, and where we need to make improvements in the future to protect ourselves against this. As my colleagues have noted, we need to have some surge capacity available in different places in order to be able to address it. But I would just point to the recent task force recommendation. One of the principal recommendations was the need for a national transportation strategy. And I think that is really, when there have been questions about where the infrastructure should be and what it should be, we really need to map that out. And I think that the learnings from this last couple of years will actually really put us in a strong position to inform the development of that kind of strategy, to figure out exactly where we need to make those investments and how we need to make those investments. So unfortunately, I can't give you the in terms of the specific question about the longest dwell, I don't know, but it was many, many weeks for sure. But we're down to about 4 days, I think, now on terminal.
Thank you. And I remember during my visit, you did mention about the time where there's a constraint where trucks comes into a port and they are required to leave the port by a certain amount of time before a fee is being charged. What kind of other fees are applicable depending on how long the container is being stored? And earlier you mentioned about the prime real estate, especially with most of the port in the West Coast are subsiding urban area. And what is the challenge you see by transporting these containers to a temporary storage site before it's being sent out?
So first of all, yes, in terms of on the trucking side of things, we do charge. So we try to incentivize on time performance. So truckers can pay for being late, and terminals can pay for not getting trucks through in a quick enough time through the terminal. So for example, right now I'm just looking at the turn times inside the terminals in Vancouver, and 3 of the terminals are turning in about 40 minutes. Which is great, and Delta Ports actually looks like right now it's at about 18 minutes, so really quick turnaround. So that side of things is moving really well. On the in terms of fees, so it basically the demurrage works as was described by my colleague. So if you it really depends on the contracts that you have in place. But you do pay for containers sitting around for too long, and you pay that in different locations. You may pay that on a container terminal, you may pay that in an off-dock facility, and it really depends on the nature of the contract that you have set up. And it typically does disadvantage the smaller mom-and-pop shops, the smaller businesses, because they don't have the market power to be able to negotiate contracts that are more beneficial with respect to that. So it can be very expensive. I can't speak to how long the dwell time is in off docks right now.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Wilson.
much.
And
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have 10 seconds left.
Thank you. Oh, I'd like to ask Mr. Dankovic about what are your suggestions to improve our rail line infrastructure as we are expanding on the Robert Banks Terminal 2 as well?
Can we have a brief answer, sir?
Well, I really can't comment on the Roberts Bank Terminal 2, other than, from our perspective, we think it is not the most effective solutions for Canada's needs. And then to the rail infrastructure expansion, I think our colleague from CN Rail would better explain that.
Well, he'll have to try to do that to someone else's question. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la...
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the feeling that my question may be for the gentleman of the Port Authority and CN Rail. Our attention has been drawn to the fact that overcrowding in Vancouver ports and Prince Rupert and the persistent overcrowding is obliging these organizations to find temporary spaces to store containers in Toronto and Montreal. So what is the situation at the Port of Montreal at present?
Honnêtement,
I would rather that Montreal respond, because I'm not really able to speak for them.
So for the Port of Montreal, we move one freight train a day out of it every day. Basically, it contains Toronto, Detroit, and Chicago freight. I get a daily report that says where we are on container storage in the Port of Montreal waiting to leave. So I'll say as of today, between the 4 terminals, we have 2 trains worth of containers to move, which is about a normal situation. I can't see what's waiting there for Canadian Pacific, and I can't see what's waiting there for truck. But overall, we're in very good situation, and we have been all summer.
En général, la situation est bonne. Donc,
So things are going well. You're not anticipating increased overcrowding?
Sir, not at all.
donc, vous voyez rien actuellement.
So at present, you don't see anything impeding operations at the Port of Montreal?
Not at all from the supply chain side. No, I know they've had lots of labor issues there over time and between the different terminals, but not from once it's on a rail car or once it's out the gate with a truck.
Parfait, je vous en remercie.
Thank you. All I can do then is be happy about it.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Massey for 2.5 minutes, please.
Madam Chair, I know Mr. Wilson wanted in on the last question, but I do want to start with this. As I actually 10 years ago, I'm glad you're doing tours now. 10 years ago, I went up to Vancouver to tour your port, and when I showed that I was actually meeting with the CBSA union over the detector dogs, my invitation was rescinded, and I actually toured your facility from the fence perimeter. So I'm curious, though, is we want to add to that, and then also to what's happening with detector dogs out there, if there's anything that you want to add on that. That's an issue that I've been working on for a long time. I can't speak. Yeah, that's a long time ago, so I'm not saying you're at fault, but I saw your port from the fence. And
yeah. I can't, so I'm very disappointed that your invitation was declined after that. I can't speak to the detector dogs, but I can tell you we do work very closely with CBSA. We actually have 2 container inspection facilities in the Lower Mainland. We recently completed building a new inspection facility for CBSA on the Tawasin First Nation lands adjacent to the Delta Port Complex. So there is a strong presence of CBSA in the port. There are also scanners at the different container terminals as containers are coming into the country as well. So CBSA is very present. They're present at terminals. They're present in the inspection facilities.
Yeah, so what I was out there for, and it was just a sensitive moment, I think, was that the detector dogs are being retired, and they can clear off a ship within 3 hours versus sometimes it could take 3 weeks, and that was the point, was trying to keep those programs in place, and I know they're there. Really quickly, again, to Mr. McDonald, what can we do with regards to a fairer process? I'm glad that you know, the OEMs, as an example, it causes stress on the supply chain down on other small and medium-sized businesses. Is any suggestions at all? I know it's not really your role, but you're kind of the operator in between the two. What can we do to alleviate the kind of those forces that pinch the small guy or girl?
That's a tough answer, right? Because it's all commercial agreements between the big guy and the small guy, and we're the guy in the middle that doesn't see either one. So I'd hate to say there's an easy solution there.
Okay, fair enough. You just see it firsthand every day, I'm sure. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Seaback for 5 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. I have a lot of questions, very little time. Mr. McDonald, so it seems to me like you're saying the Milton facility is 8 years in planning, 3 years to build, so 11 years in total.
It's 8 years getting it through the regulatory process, not
Yeah,
planning.
8 years through the regulatory process. And now another, how many years do you think until it's completed?
Roughly 3, as we would comply with the 300 different conditions put on the approval.
So I don't have time to get it on the record today, but would you be prepared on behalf of your company to submit a report on why it took 8 years to go through the regulatory process?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gooch, you talked about en route clearances available in the United States but not in Canada. What's the impediment here? Why hasn't it happened? Sounds like a big issue.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's one I'm definitely going to pass to Debbie Murray as the subject matter expert on that one.
Thank you. Sorry, my understanding, and this is something that's been brought forward by our members, is that currently there's an issue around policy, so it's a policy limitation as well as a human resource limitation. So it's a conversation that we continue to have with CBSA.
How long have you been having that conversation with CBSA? Do you know?
our organization, it hasn't been a long time, but I do know, since it was brought up by members, that it's been a while. Yeah.
Hazard a guess how long the members have been raising this? 2 years, 5 years?
A couple of years.
Okay, thanks very much. You talked about financing challenges and saying, your ability to raise your own capital for expansions. What are the specific impediments that the rules and regulations that are in place? And if you could change them so that you could have access to private capital and speed up projects, what would those be?
Well, currently what we have in place for the larger ports would be the borrowing limits, which is just the airport authorities or private business just doesn't deal with artificially set borrowing limits. So what we would like to see is ideally a more flexible process where the ports would be able to go out and finance projects in the same way that an airport authority or a private business would be able to. We talk a lot about flexibility, and it goes a bit beyond that. I was talking with one of our ports the other day, and I think his challenge is an interesting case study. They have the opportunity to expand within the confines of their current land, but to do that, they need to move some things around. They need to move part of their cruise operation to another part of the harbor. It would have tremendous benefits for that part of the community, where it would revitalize businesses, shops, restaurants with that traffic. And in doing that would open up container terminal capacity. The borrowing limits mean they can't, even though that project on its entirety may be commercially viable, able to provide a good financial return, they don't have the ability to go and borrow the funds required for that. So now they're looking for funding. Well, the National Trade Corridors Fund, you can get funding for the container part of that operation, of that project, but that's not where the costs are. The costs are on the cruise side. Maybe a regional economic development agency might be able to fill the gap there, but they're not eligible for those funds. So will they figure it out? Of course they will. Our ports are innovative and will find a solution. But an airport authority would not have the same challenges. It would be a very different situation.
The best solution would be allow you to borrow the money that you need in order to finance these projects.
What our ports are looking for is the tools
Yep.
to be able to do what makes the most sense. Debbie spoke to another side of the challenge, which is those smaller ports that have lower revenues. It's more of a funding issue. The National Trade Corridors Fund may not be the best project. It may not be able to. It may not be successful, for example, in getting funding to replace a dock that, the revenues that the port generates would not be sufficient to cover the costs associated with that project. It's something we see across Canada when it comes to transportation infrastructure.
If the rules were changed, you wouldn't have to try and pigeonhole yourself into these various programs. You could have a whole of business approach.
Correct.
Okay. How much time do I have? Okay. Surge capacity. What's the impediment to having surge capacity? Because I've heard that come up a whole bunch of times.
On the rail side, I'll say is the fact that we don't have a business case for it. So you don't have business attached to it. Everything has a return on its investment. We don't have customers specifically asking for it until they need it, right? And by then it's too late, and it takes a long time to get into place, and it's a lot of money, a lot of rules we have to conform to.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Sheehan for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much to all of our presenters, and some of the questions that I was going to ask have already been answered, and I thank you for that. But I just wanted to sort of dive into the actual shortage of the shipping containers. In some of my reading, I'd seen that the containers itself, there was a shortage, and there was a hope in 2021 that there would be a rebound, that there would be more of these shipping containers made in 2021. And the stat that I saw was that it was only about 7% up from the year before. I would like to ask any of the members sort of an update of where the shipping container, physical shipping container production is at. We know a lot of it is produced in China. And there have been suggestions by other witnesses that there's also attempts to monopolize on the containers. So through you, Chair, to our presenters, I would like to get an update.
I can at least answer part of that question, and that is that with respect to, I can't speak to the production of containers, but what I can speak to is the availability of containers. What we saw is when you're paying, as a shipping line, you're earning $10,000 for the front haul to North America, and you're only getting a tiny fraction of that for whatever cargo you're taking back from Canada. There's a huge financial incentive for you to just get that container back to Asia as quickly as possible, or wherever it's originating from, and fill it up for another front haul cargo load. There was a lot of discussion during the pandemic about should there be some policy change or something to try and keep more containers in Canada and force them for export. But no matter what, when you look at it, I mean, the kinds of fees and punitive levies you'd need to get the shipping line's attention in that kind of market dynamic would have been hugely destructive to trade in Canada. And so that's why we're very much in favor of always looking for a better market-based solution. That being said, hopefully that problem is now starting to be addressed, and you will see greater availability of containers. I think it's probably less about the quantity, the sort of global population of containers, if you will, and it's more about just making those containers available to Canadian exporters.
Marco, you were shaking your head throughout the comments. Would you like to add?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. I think last year the largest growth in exports from Canada was air, because it was the empty containers going back to Asia at the rates, as you heard from Mr. Wilson mention, they were extremely beneficial to the ocean carriers. And so, of course, they were incentivized to bring those containers back and move them back. Those numbers are definitely coming down today and over the recent months. And as I mentioned, with the extreme kind of collapse in the rates, we're seeing a much lower volume of those empty exports leaving. It's still larger than in the past, but it's quickly adjusting to a new normal. And so I think some of those availabilities that were an issue in the kind of a peak of the post-pandemic supply chain challenges are going to right themselves. And ultimately, if we project out seeing the volumes and the rates declining, as the rates are declining, usually that follows in the volume decline. And my suspicion is next year, Q1, Q2, we're going to see a significant economic downturn. Some already are predicting it. Container volumes and rates are kind of a canary in a coal mine. And based on what we're seeing now is that, next year is going to be challenging as it comes to our economy.
Well, thank you for that. It's very helpful. And, my family was in the trucking business, and my friend had a trucking business as well. And we always hate to hear when we see things going back empty. We like to fill it full of things and send it. So I think there's something that we have to think about on that one. The other question that I had too as well is the National Trade Corridor funding has significant dollars associated with it to help with the supply chains. Has any of the companies presented applied to it, and if yes, where? Because I know that the short line rails are finally eligible under this particular programming. That was one of the things that the last 7 years they had been talking about, and the short line rails are important in my neck of the woods, such as Huron Central. I know out in Western Canada and Quebec, short line rails are critical to this whole supply chain moving. So has anyone applied, and if so, for what particular areas?
And get a brief response to that.
For the rails, very briefly, we've only started in the last couple of years, and you'll see us apply it on capacity expansions in our network. And that's key where we're doing it now, and you'll see more of that into the future.
We've received $300 million in contribution funding towards about $1 billion worth of road and rail infrastructure in the Lower Mainland.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carey for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here. Coming from Oshawa, we have a port, and it's wonderful to have that infrastructure there. But I wanted to ask you a couple questions focusing on capacity, how to increase capacity. And the other question would be on border modernization, because I think it was Mr. Gooch talked about harmonization with the United States. So I'd like to delve into that a bit more. But the first one is the capacity. I know friends of mine, Madame Murray, maybe this best question for you, friends of mine from out west, with the lack of pipeline capacity, they mentioned to me that now oil and gas is being loaded onto rail. And you mentioned the requirement to have a task force that would kind of look at the infrastructure and how important the logistics are there. Now, if we were able to get a lot of that oil and gas off rail and put them into safe pipelines, has anybody looked at how much of a capacity increase we would get from that? And with this task force that you're recommending, would that be something that they would take into account?
I can't comment in terms of the capacity and the demand, or between pipeline and rail. I mean, and I will say I suspect that, rail will continue to move oil and gas. But I think with regards to the second, your second question on the task force, it is something that they should potentially look at. It is part of the determination as to what sort of infrastructure we need nationally. It's critical. I mean, not just the pipelines and the rail, but the intermodal, the ports, trucking, everything should definitely be assessed by the task force.
Yeah, that I've heard, I have no numbers, but just the amount of oil and gas that is going by rail, even if we could take a percentage of that off, it would increase capacity. You mentioned that you've asked repeatedly for this task force and this review, and it just makes a lot of sense, especially now with us being such aggressive traders around the world in Canada. What's the government saying, and why is the delay for the review of this request?
They are saying that they're conducting the assessment.
Yeah, that's not good, especially right now, because Mr. Massey and I both come from automotive areas, and he mentioned the just-in-time delivery. And I think it was Mr. Gooch was mentioning the harmonization with the United States. In 2011, we signed the Beyond the Borders agreement, and we did talk about, I think, enhanced security, but also mechanisms for enhanced trade. You mentioned the Americans have en route pre-clearance. Are we using things like radio frequency identification, RFID cards, for example, to the capacity they should be used? I see Mr. McDonald shaking his head. This is something that it was kind of my file I was working on like years ago. Have we progressed with that? Like, why are we so far behind? Because this is like outrageous, because competitiveness is going to be such a huge issue moving forward.
A couple questions in there. So, I just to add to my colleague, I think, seeing the report of the supply chain task force and kind of where they're sending us next in terms of that development of the national strategy is right where we should be. We're very interested at the Association of Canadian Port Authorities to work in the development of that strategy and in the implementation of the recommendations in there. You did speak to CBSA, and my colleague spoke to the regulatory and policy side, which I'm not as familiar with as her. But I will say, prior to I joined ACPA in February, but I worked with CBSA for about 10 years before that, and I've generally found them to be a very innovative agency that wants to do things like more border modernization, but often finds resources are a constraint there. We have examples of ports around the country that have opportunities to develop their trade and their business, but there are certain impediments, and one of the impediments that's sometimes in place is the ability to have CBSA services at the port. The Port of Hamilton is a tremendous opportunity, a great example rather. The St. Lawrence Seaway is one, and the Great Lakes, which make up a system here, is one of the greatest assets we have as a continent in terms of being able to use that to bring containers and shipments right into the Great Lakes, into our ports there. We have ports of Windsor, Hopa, Toronto, and Thunder Bay. But there are impediments in the way, and CBSA Resources is one of those. They're aware of it. They're working to correct it. But again, I think those are the types of issues we like to see a national strategy really take a look at, and that's going to require not to dismiss the work of the supply chain task force, but it's probably take more than 100 days and a lot more work. So it's why we're pleased to see we're going in that direction.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Arya, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McDonald, recently when I was reading about the autonomous truck testing that was being done in the U.S. between Dallas and Atlanta, 5 days, day and night, 6,300 miles, and autonomous truck driving, I was wondering what impact it will have on first on the existing truck industry and second on the rail companies, but we'll come to that later. And I want to thank CN Rail for taking steps to, I understand from what you said, all the backlog has been cleared now. My question is that you did mention about that 7 or 8 year regulatory process. Is it all federal regulatory process that it took 7 or 8 years for the approval?
It became a federal entire full 5-year environmental review.
Okay, is it something new that happened in the last 5 or 10 years?
It's the only time, I think, to my knowledge in our history that we've actually done that for a project where we've actually owned the land, and it was a farmer's farmland that we'd owned for our company for 10 to 15 years, that we were forced to go through that full process and then go through the courts for it as well.
And in your opening remarks, you mentioned about the weakest link. Obviously, anything is as strong as the weakest link. Did you say that the weakest link was CBSA with its legacy systems, or can you expand on that weakest link remark?
So from a data standpoint, the CBSA actually is the one who has all the data, but they have, and I'm taking them at their word, they have antiquated IT systems. They're not able to pull the data out, and they also have the processes or the legislation that they're not allowed to provide the data anyway. So we spend a lot of time trying to get information as to where all these containers are going. So maybe we can open up a new terminal somewhere to help alleviate pressure. To this day, 3 months later, I cannot get that information from anybody in the supply chain where it would be best to help alleviate future issues in the entire market.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned that 30% of the shipments you do is for the international trade, correct?
Right.
And what is your market share?
It all depends. It's by commodity, right? So overall, you look at it, so the bunch of it, if you look for the rail market share, we're probably almost like, I'll say, 60-40 with Canadian Pacific Rail as an example. But, a lot of this moves by pipeline. So basically, our percentage of the crude for export out of Canada is 0. So you have to really look at it from a commodity by commodity standpoint.
And, you obviously know the rail companies outside of Canada too. Is it something what they too experienced, or is this unique to Canada?
It was more unique primarily in North America because we're such a large consumer area. Europe actually did have some issues as well. So they are a big consumption society, but they're also a lot closer, and they also can truck and have a lot more rail. But a lot of it's served by water. So they were able to actually perform a lot better than we were.
So what we experienced in Canada is something to what happened in the U.S. too?
We mimic the U.S. very well.
Oh, nice. And another thing is that, do you think this sort of situation is going to come again? If yes, what is that specific thing that the federal government can do?
Will this happen again? The answer is probably. So I would say yes. Now, unless we're ready to, I'll say, put in the surge capacity and fix a lot of the issues around the supply chain, a lot of it being data first, and then having that surge capacity, we're just setting ourselves up to see history repeat itself.
And now, since I got some time, can you comment on the impact the autonomous vehicle, autonomous trucks or trailers can make in 5 or 10 years down the road on the trucking industry and on the rail companies?
We're a small investor in one of them, just so we can follow what they're doing. So the answer is they will. Today in the U.S., about 500 miles is kind of the number. You can say 1,000 is a better number to use. 1,000 miles says it should move by rail. Anything under should move by truck. That's probably going to get extended by at least another 500 to another 1,000 miles. So what that's going to do is put a lot more intermodal freight moving on. It will move back onto the road, which will be a taxing on the infrastructure both in Canada and the U.S. So, and I don't think any of us are set up for that.
Okay. Now, you said you're also an investor in one of those companies. I guess that is in the U.S., right?
Correct.
Anything on that front being done in Canada?
They haven't really got up to Canada as much. There's a little bit being done in Canada. The issue is they have a problem with winter right now. So they're really trying to, they're testing in the southern United States to make sure the technology works, and they're gradually going to move north.
When the trailers are getting tested there in Ottawa, we have a 16-kilometer roadways where these automotive technologies are getting tested, especially because of the weather. That's the reason why many companies, mostly passenger cars, a lot of software is also getting developed in Ottawa. A lot of autonomous software for autonomous driving across the world. It is getting done in Ottawa.
Appel au règlement, Madame la Présidente.
The interpreter cannot do her work because our colleague is speaking too far from the microphone, Madam Chair.
Mr. Wright, when you're speaking, please speak closer to the microphone. The translators are having difficulty interpreting it.
Okay,
so,
how much time I have?
All right, so your time is up.
Okay,
But please ensure it's imperative that the translators hear it clearly and translate everything clearly. Okay, Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you. I'll make the effort and get close to the mic. It's a simple question. Do you have any information on the sectors that are affected? We've heard a lot about grains. We heard that softwood lumber producers were also encountering problems. So in your view, what sectors other than grain are in difficulty that we may be unaware of?
Is this with respect to containers or overall?
Oui, en lien avec la crise actuelle.
In relation to the current crisis, in your view?
They're really, it's anything around the container supply chain. So that what gets put in a container, a little bit of softwood lumber, not as much as it used to be, so it's a lot smaller. Pulp goes in quite a bit still, so that's a large export through containers. Grains by far our largest export, so like dramatically higher than everything else.
So pulp and paper, the concerns of softwood lumber producers aren't shipping primarily through containers anymore?
They do some, but a lot of it's by truck, and they're not having that big a problem getting the containers. So if you look at Quebec in particular, almost all that moves by truck to and from the plant to the Port of Montreal and goes for export. The rest of it will either move by truck or by rail, usually going into the U.S. market, which they've tried to focus on.
Parfait, je vous remercie. Dernière question.
Thank you. A last question to all of you. At our last meeting a week and a half ago, a witness said that it was necessary to have a strategy to increase the value of ports. Do you share that view?
Dans quel sens la valeur?
What do you mean by value? To revitalize the use of ports, that ports are not being essentially seen as valuable as they actually are.
Je vais répondre en anglais.
I will answer that in English.
I can speak properly to the question, but what I will say is, we have a tremendous network of ports in this country. There is unused capacity in certain parts of the country, and certainly, we think there are opportunities there to make better use of some of the assets that are maybe underutilized. I think in general our ports are working well and supporting their important role in facilitating trade. We're really looking at what we need over the next 10, 15, 20 years to ensure that Canada continues to have the capacity it needs while making a lot of other investments that need to be made in terms of fuels of the future, adapting to climate change, being hardened infrastructure, resilient infrastructure. Really, we're very focused on ensuring that our port system can continue to serve the needs of Canada and our economy for the decades to come. We think there's a tremendous opportunity now with the focus on supply chains, with the work of the Supply Chain Task Force kind of pivoting to where we go next. And so that's why I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Massey for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Mr. Dekovich,
wondering if has there been much innovation in the containers themselves? You know, aside from like people trying to use them for housing, I haven't seen much, and I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just curious whether there's actually been some innovation to lighten them, make them more efficient. I'm just curious about that aspect of it, because the only time you really see them is when they're passing by on the highway or the roadways, or in a movie or something like that, and we just kind of vision them as Lego blocks. Maybe I'll start with you, and then if anybody else has any comments, I'm just wondering whether there's some work happening on there or whether it's worthwhile.
Sure. Thanks for that question. I mean, again, we're not the experts in containers themselves. Our job is to move them and to make sure they spend least amount of time possible in our terminals. I can just speak anecdotally from what we've seen. Yeah, we've seen certain shipping lines invest into lighter containers and using some different materials, in particular in the interior and insulation of the containers. But ultimately, container is intended to be a standardized unit, so everybody tries. You know, the industry, the whole focus of it is to keep them standardized. You know, to have as much as standardization across the entire industry. We know there's been some moves by certain ocean carriers to, you know, RFID all their containers and use technology to track them better, et cetera. So all those innovations are happening. And you know, I just want to use this opportunity to kind of comment on the industry overall. And we hear a lot of comments about digitization. You know, I think there's maybe a misperception that, you know, around terminals and in the industry, people start kind of walking around with pen and paper and tracking containers. We have a very sophisticated digital infrastructure at all of our terminals. We have a digital twin of our GCT Deltaport intermodal rail yard. It's the most technologically advanced on-dock intermodal rail yard in the world. It's a semi-automated on-dock intermodal rail yard. So all those things exist already in Canada and are being done and invested by private sector dollars. So I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
Just on the container side, you'll see a lot of innovation on the refrigerated containers. Okay. So they now have a lot of them are GPS enabled. They'll tell you where they are. They'll tell you how much fuel they have left in them, when they're going to go, when it's going to go up, when you have to refill them. They've spent a lot of money on that side of the market, and it works very well.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Carey for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McDonald, I was trying to get some information about capacity, and if we did things a little bit differently, if we could take things off rail that didn't have to be on rail. The question was about the oil and gas sector, because I've heard from my friends out west that significant amount of oil and gas are on rail. And I asked about the supply chain task force, if this is something we could look at. But do you have any idea if we were able to get some of that oil and gas into safe transportation through pipelines, how much capacity could we free up?
There's very little oil that moves by rail. So it's a very, very minuscule part of the market. A lot of it's heavy oil that doesn't go well with pipelines, and generally it moves to refineries that are not rail or pipeline connected. Okay. So that's where it is. Now, when the oil sands are, Alberta's producing really well and it's over the pipeline capacity, that's when you saw some surges over the last 5 years moving by rail, but that has died down to almost nothing with the pipeline capacity expansions that have been done.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned the Milton facility and how long it took to build. Again, I'm all about competitiveness and getting more jobs to come to our country and stay in this country. But 8 years through a regulatory system, you mentioned 334 conditions, I believe, that you have to go through. Are you able to let us know, are they like municipal? Is that federal or?
It's 100% federal. So they've taken into account some of the municipals. I get that. So literally it's 5 years through the environmental process, another year through the courts, so I'll say 6 years through the government side of it. And now we're finally into the construction, and we're still in court with the municipalities because they're still trying to get it stopped at the same time. So it's a fight, but we're going to get there. We have started construction this year, realigning 2 creeks, which is part of the conditions. It's fine. And then it'll take us another year to do more of the conditions. So we'll probably only have it up and running in 2.5 years from now.
Okay. That you mentioned we don't want history to repeat itself. Is there a recommendation you could make to the committee to kind of streamline that? Because it does deter people from coming to Canada.
Well, it's not just rail. So even like big companies want to put up plants, all face the same type of hurdles. Mm-hmm. So really what we need is, I'll say, a government process that allows them to streamline through all the different ministries to allow to get things done quickly and allow decisions to be made in a much more rapid manner. So 5 years for an environmental approval is a long time.
Oh, is it ever? And last question, like in Oshawa, we have an airport and we have a port. You mentioned human resources. I know Representative Higgins in the United States was asking Canada to increase resources so that people that can help get these goods across the border. I know in Oshawa we had a CBSA office and basically it was full-time. Now it's got shut down. I think somebody comes in every now and then. But what do you think we could do to increase that capacity? Is it just hiring more people, or what do you see?
Well, I think CBSA would be best placed to respond to that. The federal government has invested in CBSA. The border modernization in my previous role was something we pushed for several years, and we did see that move forward. At the end of the day, you always need people to do certain things, but greater reliance on technology, greater flexibility for them. I speak to flexibility and nimbleness for our port authorities. Our government agencies need that as well. Sometimes they face policy constraints that are not necessarily within their control. But in terms of their human resource challenge, I'd really have to defer that to the officials at CBSA.
Okay, no, that's great. How much time do I have? 1 more minute, eh? Maybe if you could just delve in a little bit on the tools in the toolbox. You mentioned a couple times the borrowing limits that you have. I've heard it from my local port. As far as to be competitive, you need to modernize. And how much of a restriction is this for you to do the modernization? And how difficult would it be for the federal government to maybe just change that quite quickly? Because it sounds to me it's not going to increase the cost to the government. Basically, you're going to be just borrowing. How quick could those changes be made?
Well, I believe it's really a matter of a couple of lines of legislation, and we know there are amendments to the Canada Marine Act are going to be tabled soon, so we're certainly going to be looking at what the government is suggesting in terms of changing that. I know one of the things that's been talked about is streamlining the process for improving the borrowing limits. I mean, that increasing borrowing limits, that might be an improvement, but that may not be the best way in terms of opening things up. You mentioned, cost to government. Really, it's kind of, it would actually help cost to government because the National Trade Corridors Fund is filling a lot of the gaps that could be otherwise filled if ports had that greater flexibility. There's more to flexibility than that, and I'm still learning about how this system works, but land transfers, the ability to buy land and develop things like inland ports, there's restrictions on a lot of the options that ports could undertake to do what they need to do to fulfill their mandate. Debbie, do you have anything to add?
Just very briefly. No. Okay, thank you very much. Under Mr. Miao for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to share my time with MP Sheehan, if I don't use it all up. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to direct the following question to Mr. McDonald. And understanding that half of your rail car is designed for 40-foot container, can you please let us know how have the rail car designed for 40-foot container had reduced delays and altered your circumstance in comparison to other rail companies that do not have the same number of rail cars that compatible with the 40-foot?
Well, from the ocean standpoint, there's 40s and 20s, so it's a function, it's a multiple, right? So when we look at providing rail cars to offload from the ports, we provide about 30 kilometers worth of rail cars every single day to the ports to bring in containers and also to bring empties or loads back. Ideally, you want as much as possible for those to be 40s and 20s because they go directly to the ships. Now, on our inland terminals, we use 53-foot containers, which is the North American standard. So we try and keep those out of the ports in order to maximize exactly how many 53s you can put on for the inland versus the 20s and 40s out of the ports. We have a whole group that does that every single day trying to match that up.
Thank you. And also, to address to your surge capacity, what is being done to build that surge capacity, and what is your timeline on expanding it, especially market change and by the time we have the surge capacity addressed, will that affect, the long term of change in our economy?
So we're not building surge capacity per se. We're building capacity based on the business that our customers telling us is coming in. What I'm saying is that if the supply chain or the government wants to build surge capacity, it's going to have to come with some funding most likely, because our customers aren't willing to support it, and that's how we build things. It's based on the business that they're going to give us. We have a contractual commercial arrangement with them, and we build that infrastructure accordingly. A great example is the grain industry. If they want to move another 1,000 tons a day to port or 10,000 tons a day to port, but they're not willing to commit to it, it's hard to invest in that rail line just on a say-so. So we would look for help with that.
Thank you. And Terry, you have more questions?
Mr. Sheehan?
Well, thank you very much. How much time do I have, Chair?
2 minutes.
Thank you. So the surge capacity that you've been talking about and the need to build towards it, I think that it's really, really critical. We've talked about, the market is going to take care of certain things. However, when I start to think about some of the ambitious plans that Canadians have for the future, the transportation networks, we really, really got to continue to invest in them. We talked about the National Trade and Transportation Corridor, where we heard there's $1 billion investment with 300 million coming from the government. Would that particular person just expand a little bit on how and what's that being used for? We ran out of time. Just to explain the investment and the good it's going to do.
Thank you. I'd be happy to do that. So what happens is the $300 million is divided between approximately 40 different projects in the Lower Mainland that were identified. And they are typically things like grade separations to remove road-rail conflicts. So in some cases, those projects are allowing railways to stage longer trains closer to strategic locations. And also in many cases, those projects also benefit the communities in which they're located by debottlenecking in terms of local traffic congestion and the like. So all of them, they're projects that were identified through a collaborative process with a number of agencies, the federal government, provincial government, and industry. And those projects were identified and then jointly supported into the National Trade Corridor for funding. We get a third of the funding from the federal government. A third of it, the Port Authority pre-funds on behalf of industry. We recover that investment from industry over time, over the amortization of the project. And then a third of that funding typically will come from the railways. Really depends on the project, but most of the projects that we're doing now, the remaining third would come from the railways.
Certainly is a very well thought out plan.
Very brief, Mr. Sheehan.
Just more of a comment then. I think I agree with the individual that perhaps our regional economic development agencies can look at being a small cog in some of the ways that we can take a look at how our products get to market.
Mr. Sheehan as well. Got a few minutes. Is there any outstanding questions that anybody? Okay, Mr. Martel, just a very short question.
Oui, very short. Oui. Just que.
Mr. MacDonald, you were saying earlier that the oil you transport by rail cannot be transported by pipeline. Is that so?
The oil that we are, some of it moves by pipeline today. So Trans Mountain Pipeline, as an example, is still under construction going to Vancouver. So we're moving oil to the West Coast to actually Washington refineries today. Once the Trans Mountain is back up and running, then at full capacity, that will now not move by rail anymore.
Ouais. Parce que je croyais que j'avais compris.
Because I thought I'd understood that the oil you transport in your cars cannot be transported by pipeline or carried over a pipeline. I thought you said it was crude oil and therefore could not be moved with the pipeline?
Sorry. Two different areas. So some of it is transportable by pipeline because the pipeline's at capacity right now, very little. Other is well outside of pipeline areas. So it comes into a rail point, gets put into a rail car, and then it's sold to refineries that are not on a pipeline, normally deep in the U.S. South. So those are the two big things that CN moves today. And then we'll take some spot moves for pipeline in the summer if we have capacity. Otherwise, we don't move it the rest of the time.
Merci.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to our witnesses. I think it was very valuable testimony from all of you, so thank you for being here. For the information of committee, this coming Friday, we will consider the draft report for the study of Canada-United States relationship and its impacts on the electric vehicle, softwood lumber, and other sectors report. And on the issue of our United States Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, if the members could ensure that we have the witness list by October the 24th so that we can begin that study. Okay, everybody's good? Everybody's fine? Okay.
Did you want to bring that up for the preliminary submission?
Just so a note for the committee members, we have finalized our preliminary submission for the proposed travel for next February or so. And it's a high-level estimate, so it's very, very accurate this time. Rather than being not as accurate, this time we will be submitting it, and it will be highly detailed, which is usually your secondary travel request. So it's clerk has done a very detailed submission, and we'll see what happens as we go forward. Okay, thank you all very much. Mr. Carey, Mr. Seaback, welcome. Glad to have you. I move adjournment. you.